Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. I was in a childhood adverse experiences and toxic stress panel earlier, and so this is the reason why I'm late. So can I say that talking about toxic stress created toxic stress and made me late? So I just listen, we're going to call this meeting to order. This is our Children, Seniors, and Families Committee. Today's February 27th at 1:30-ish. And I'd love to see if we can call this meeting to order.
Vice Chairperson Young.
Here.
Chairperson Arenas.
I'm here too.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Awesome. Okay, we're all moving forward. This is item number 2, public comment. And at this time, we'll take public comment on items that are not listed on today's agenda. If you're in person, please fill out the yellow card. Or if you are online, please raise your virtual hand. And so now is the time to talk about any matter not listed on today's agenda. And Camille, can you please let us know if there's any public comments, in person or not?
I have one virtual request.
Perfect.
So 3 minutes.
We'll have 3 minutes for that person. Yes, thank you.
Speaker is iPhone. You'll have 3 minutes. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. On February 17th, we had an op-ed written by Pa Ching, published on San Jose Spotlight. And she is calling for the replacement of leadership at social services and DFCS. And she states that there's no changes have been made, no significant changes have been made, and there are children being put at risk. Let me tell you, as a parent, I find this really to be true. My kids are being sexually abused, and Daniel Little and Wendy Kinnear Roush and Sarah Duffy, they all know that this is happening, and I've given them explicit details of what's going on, and they're just gaslighting me. They won't even answer basic questions like, have you conducted a screening? Do you intend on conducting a screening? What is your reason or rationale for conducting or not conducting a screening? How do you mitigate conflicts of interest? I mean, Wendy Kinnear Roush responded exactly one time, and she said, hey, if you want to file a complaint, you could file a complaint with our complaints division. I mean, what kind of a response is that? I mean, that's basically giving me a middle finger saying, I don't care. I mean, this is going to keep going on. And I mean, conflicts of interest should never preclude the county from performing its mandated tasks and duties. I mean, my former attorney, she wants the sexual abuse to continue, but I mean, I don't understand how you could play teams on this. It's not about I'm on your team and you're on my team. This is about protecting children, and these people just don't get it. They're elitist child abusers. I mean, why is the county executive forcing the community to be subjected to this. I mean, why are we not? Everybody's calling on the replacement of these people. The community is calling for it. The Mercury News editorial board is calling for it. The social workers, the parents who've been victimized by these people, we're all calling for the removal of these people. But the county executive is just shoving these people down the community's throats, and it's wrong. We need to replace these people. They don't care about children. They're very cold people who don't care. Please, let's change it. Let's remove them. Thank you for your time.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you, and I would like to share a message with the public, and because California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of a suspected child abuse or neglect, we're really not authorized by law to speak to any specifics of any particular case, no matter how horrendous the allegations are. California law also requires child welfare departments to immediately cross-report physical and sexual abuse of children to law enforcement and the district attorney so that there's swift action that can be taken when needed. The public can be assured that our county takes all allegations of child abuse and neglect seriously. That includes rapid and cross-agency responses to such allegations by the Department of Family and Children's Services, local law enforcement, the Children's Advocacy Center, and the district attorney. And so if you have a suspected child abuse report that you like to make, you can call 833-SCC-KIDS or 833-722-5437. Thank you. All right, so we are going to move forward with item 3, which is approving the consent calendar and changes to the committee agenda. At this time, I'd like to see if we can approve the consent calendar. Currently on the consent calendar are items 9 through 11, I believe. It is, yes, 9 through 11. I'd like to ask my vice chair for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar as is.
Perfect, and I will second that, and we'll look to Jess.
And no request to speak on item 3. Vice Chairperson Young,
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas.
Thank you, Jess. That would be a yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we are going to move to our regular agenda. This is item 4, receive report from the Department of Family and Children's Services relating to options to establish a child welfare community roundtable. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Supervisor,
Hi, Wendy.
Chair, Supervisor Arenas, and Supervisor Young. I'm going to invite up to the table a partner in this work for questions, James Shapiro-Gibbons, who serves as the president on the Child Abuse Prevention Council. They'll be available for questions. I'll go ahead and take this item. So this is the first item we're bringing back, was at the request of you, Supervisor Arenas, to establish a child welfare community roundtable that brings together stakeholders for improved partnership. After discussion and review, and in consideration of ease of meeting, avoiding quorum issues, providing more informal but a structured way for community participation, administration is recommending an administrative created roundtable rather than a board created legislative body, and is presenting 3 options to both of you for consideration. The first option that we are presenting is to utilize our existing Child Prevention Council, CAPC, to serve as the Community Child Welfare Roundtable. The strengths of this option is that the board could ensure a renewed focus through future appointments representing a strong community voice from core community stakeholders. We would be utilizing an existing resource whose primary purpose is to coordinate community efforts revolving around preventing and responding to child abuse. It's a structured means to accomplish this, and we could create subcommittees or ad hoc committee out of this forum. There are currently 23 diverse members on this group, and membership does include those from community whose really primary purpose is around child abuse. There's already monthly report outs by DFCS to CAPC every month, so there's an area and ability to do that. Consideration of this option would be needed modification of the bylaws. It is in-person Brown Act protected. If selected, we would need to go back and present that formally to the CAPC members for their full agreement and their buy-in. And we would need to ensure representation to fully represent from a race and equity lens, from a BIPOC lens, geographical considerations, and our transgendered, transdiverse community as well. Option number 2 presented for you would be that administration establishes a group of possibly around 15 to 20 participants representing community-based organizations, leaning on several of the groups that have presented themselves that are focused on advocacy around diversity and equity and a focus on child welfare. This would include all of existing committees from those that are internal to the department, made up of employee groups such as El Comote, the African American Ancestry Committee, the Asian Pacific Island Committee, our Native American Indigenous community group, and our LGBTQ group, as well as those outside groups, the Back Kitchen Cabinet, La Raza Roundtable, Project Phoenix, the Children of Color Work Group. The strengths on this is that it would build on existing meetings and partnerships and groups that are already established. Consideration is that would need to be a forum and a structure built around this, facilitation, ensuring equity of who's at the table, and making sure we're not missing partners. And then option number 3 presented is to really repurpose an existing DFCS community forum into this child welfare community roundtable. Currently, DFCS does this quarterly with over 200 participants representing about 90 community-based organizations. Quarterly get together to DFCS presents topics and gathers feedbacks and insights. The strengths of this is there's a large outreach to a very diverse and cross-sector group. And DFCS recently expanded this to incorporate the faith-based continuum. Consideration is that attendance varies on this. It's largely presentation and discussion right now. We need to look at structure, equity considerations, a refocus, and a shared facilitation. So our next steps on this are really to hear any questions from the supervisors, anything else you think we should consider, and then final decision-making for a pathway forward.
Thank you so much. I'm going to first check with Jess to see if there's any public comment.
Yes, I have one virtual request.
Okay, let's set that up for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Our speaker is iPhone. You'll have 2 minutes. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
I mean, I really don't understand how this is different from any other committee that we already have, like the Child Abuse Prevention Council and all their subcommittees, and also the Child Welfare Ad Hoc Committee and this committee. I mean, I think the thing that's really lacking from all of this is that we're not taking input from parents who have been failed by our system. I mean, it just seems like we're just putting the same people into these committees who are basically echoing that everything's great, everything's good, let's keep presenting and say great things are happening, when it's really not happening. I mean, you had the death of baby Phoenix, the death of Ellie Lorenzo, and the death of Jordan Walker, and countless other parents who are complaining that their children are being abused in some way and nothing's being done about it, not even a screening. And I mean, let me give you a perfect example. I mean, I attended the last Child Abuse Prevention Council meeting, and I was allowed to give public comment on the first agenda item that was meant for items not related to the agenda. And then no public comment was taken for any of the agenda items. And when I finally raised my hand for item 7, I was booted from the meeting and not allowed to return. I mean, you don't even want to hear from the community. You just do whatever you want to do, and you violate the Brown Act. And I mean, it's just going to be a joke to have another body that's going to address child abuse concerns. I mean, I don't know what you could do with this feedback, but hopefully you could add parents, you know, people who are suffering because of the failures. Thank you for your.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. And, you know, there's one last thing I'd like to add in terms of response, and that is this is regarding judicial corruption. The California Department of Social Services has a complaint page which provides direction on submitting a complaint when there is a concern about a California judge's performance, as well as other complaints about County Child Welfare Services Agency. And you can call the CDSS, California Department of Social Services, at 916-651-8848. And that is 916-651-8848. Okay, so we are going to move forward on this item, and I'm looking to my vice chair for any feedback.
More questions and feedback. Thank you for that presentation, Wendy. So I know this request was part of an earlier request out of the ad hoc committee. What are we hoping to achieve with the community roundtable? And that's going to help me understand better what would be the best vehicle moving forward.
So I will attempt to answer that, and then I'll lean on, you want to go through everything?
Yes, Wendy, so sorry, just to give some historical background, Supervisor Young, this is the last recommendation that we had, we had a shared referral with Supervisor Chavez. As you know, that we had shared work in this arena, and to wrap up the conversations and the hearings that we had with a lot of just multi stakeholders, we have one referral, and I'd love to have my team share it with you. But one of those suggestions was to have, and it came from a lot of our stakeholders, to say, we need a body that helps continually listen to us and have us really be incorporated. And obviously there's three options here, but that's optimally where it came from. And then recognizing also that there is Project Phoenix, stakeholders who have been meeting and had been meeting for quite some time, I think since the beginning of last year, on an ongoing basis, and a lot of those folks are represented on this, one of the list of option 2. And so, and I had attended one of those meetings for Project Phoenix. Typically my team members would attend, and we were just sharing a lot of the same information. We were having the same conversations, and so just to make sure that we are really having a true partnership and combining all of our efforts and leveraging resources, we thought, why don't we all have the same conversation at the same time? And that is an effort to really, one, be transparent with everybody, and also be comprehensive about involving everyone. But Wendy, if you want to have another,
No, I think you did a beautiful job combining that, and I think we took that in the spirit of that and took a look at what's out there, what's possible, what could we get to, and what could we get to fairly quickly, because obviously we want to make sure we're being mindful about those different conversations.
Perfect.
So I was just going to add one thing, if that's okay. Oh, yes. I was going to say, I just appreciated this request because I think really consistent with what you just shared, Supervisor Arenas, the duplicative conversations with only partial participation is a big challenge on the staff side in a number of different arenas. And I think at times we'll need to focus renewed attention on an area, need to bring more folks into that conversation. And we've seen in a lot of different contexts the emergence of other sets of meetings and groups, which I think at times, especially right now for DFCS and for other experts that are working in child abuse prevention and response in different ways, like Assistant District Attorney James Ruben Shapiro, it's challenging to attend all of those different meetings and to make sure that you're then presenting the same information across forums while also then moving the ball forward on doing the systems reform work that we need to do. And so I appreciated the request because it did allow us to tee up certain existing forums that we know need to continue to exist and really try and make sure that we're making those better rather than adding new meetings to everyone's calendars when we also really need time and bandwidth to do the core work of making things work better for children and families.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I like hearing from. Thank you so much for helping me catch up with history here. It sounds like where there's already existing voices, right, to just consolidate the conversations to be much more fruitful. And so I guess, like, where do you see the biggest overlap of stakeholders? Like, where is there already a pre-existing space? I mean, and amongst these three, which one really has more voices?
So I can tell you that the department is leaning more towards utilizing our CAPC forum to be able to do that, just because there is a structure, facilitation, a way to bring that in and to easily add those voices on things. We could get to that much quicker. It does require some partnership in how that would look, and so obviously we need to bring that back to that body and not making a decision for them. The second option would really be about we create that forum, and bringing those groups together would be our second choice. I think the one that I think would be much more far-reaching would be really that community forum with all of those stakeholders. The reach is really far, but really having an organized way to bring things together. And this is absolutely not to replace any of those things. It really is what's been intended to bring together, to align, to have a space where then there can be a fold out to other groups on things. So because information is important, especially right now with everything going on. And so this really is to be mindful of that and getting that information out.
Yeah, thank you. And since we have James Gibbons Shapiro, I'd love to hear from your perspective if, the potential of the Child Abuse Prevention Council being a home for this body.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you for inviting me to be here to answer questions about this. I want to highlight a correction to the ledge file that Wendy mentioned in her opening presentation that is part of your consideration. So the ledge file talked about how the three options are all not Brown Act bodies, but I just want to emphasize that the Child Abuse Prevention Council and its subcommittees are Brown Act bodies. And what that means under our county rules is that the meetings for the membership are in-person meetings. So people making public comment can be remote, but if you're a member and making the meeting, it has to be in person. So I think that that's a strength because it gets people together in the same room. It's also a weakness because it just makes it more difficult for a broad number of people, for people with lived experience maybe to travel to an in-person meeting. So I just wanted to highlight that. The next couple things that I would say is that I'm glad that Wendy mentioned that we have an upcoming meeting on March 14th. So if the board is leaning towards having the Child Abuse Prevention Council, we'd want to have that as part of our agenda to talk about at the 14th meeting. And I think that what CAPC would be looking for is, in addition to having a forum for lots of voices to be heard, for what is the deliverable objective for this. So either from direction from you or that CAPC would develop itself, what is the deliverable objective to this committee and to the broader Board of Supervisors and to DFCS for what's the result of that input. So I think that's true for any of the options, but certainly for CAPC, we'd want to either from you or ourselves make a really clear direction about what's the deliverable that we needed to be giving to you.
Thank you, James. Chairwoman Arenas, really just appreciate your leadership on this, and as this is your brainchild, really would love to hear about your thoughts on where we're at.
Sure, and thank you. I really appreciate your questions. I think one of the things that, let me just start by saying I have just a tremendous amount of respect for the folks who are working already by coming together, whether it's the child welfare, the community-based child welfare, or what is it? The option 3, that is the DFCS Community Forum, right? Community Forum. I think there's like 200 plus folks there, and so I am in the same vein in terms of what Greta was talking about earlier. We all need to have the same conversations at the same time and leverage resources and efforts, right? So I'd love to see us work something out where we are taking advantage of that. But there's also something else that I think we have to take into account, and that is stakeholders created their own pathway and their own group, which is Project Phoenix, and I think they did that because they wanted to have some semblance of control and create power within their organizing efforts, and so I'll give you my recommendation, but I also think that we need to listen to some of the stakeholders in terms of what they might feel is most effective. One of my team members attended one of the meetings, and I think they've given me some feedback, and I think what I'm going to go for is maybe a hybrid. I don't want to disrupt, even though I do like disrupting. I don't want to disrupt something that works, and I think the Child Abuse Prevention Council is very well established. And last year I think I asked our former chair of this committee to bring in the CAPC so that we could work with one another more comprehensively. I think we need to continue to figure out what that means for us. Like, what kind of feedback also from the CAPC are we looking for? I know you asked for a deliverable as a result of this new whatever body, if we use it pre-existing or not. For me, primarily, I think it's to contribute to the reform efforts, whether it's the correction action plan or the strategic improvement plan, so that we can really get some solid work around what that looks like and what that means. I don't want to talk around an issue. And as much as I want to be a soundboard for concerns, I want us to be able to have progress and move forward and have plans to make improvements, and they have to be conducive to what we are already doing. And I think for me would be around the CAP and the SIP, which is that corrective action plan and the strategic improvement plan. So for me, that would be the deliverable, is for that feedback for them to be part of that feedback into those two tools that we're using for the reform. Now, here's my idea, and tell me what you think, but I was thinking about, we could begin to have the third option, which is the Child Welfare Community Roundtable, because that is what our stakeholders asked for originally. And we can establish the group with the purpose of integrating them slowly into the CAPC. Because at this point, we haven't even asked the CAPC whether it's something that they would want to take on. And I think I don't want to wait until the CAPC figures out maybe how to reorganize themselves, or how, if they need to, and how they'll do that. And in an effort to just continue to move forward, I'd love to see maybe having a child welfare community roundtable, which is option 2, excuse me. I think I said it was 3 before. It's option 2, to establish that, to bring in all of those groups that we said, the Project Phoenix, the Black Kitchen Cabinet, all of those affinity groups within DFCS, all of those folks who've just been already meeting with one another, but outside of this process and outside of our committees and outside of our conversations, so that we can really bring them in and work together, while at the same time maybe working through some of the issues that we're going to face with the CAPC, because I know that it needs to be a modification to the structure, since it is a Brown-acted group. We might decide, and the CAPC may say, we're good right here where we're at. We have our objectives, we fulfill them, and we don't have the bandwidth to do anything more. Or they might be able to say, you know what, I think it feeds really well to what we're doing, and we'd love to figure out how to restructure ourselves so that we can have this modification integrate all these other groups. And I think it has to be in a manageable way so that we don't get too large, too big, too soon, and a lot of the feedback gets lost in the process, if that makes sense. So those were my thoughts. I thought, we can start with option 2, establish, bringing everybody together, coalescing, and at the same time, in parallel, have the CAPC have their own discussion about whether they're able to restructure to fit in this other objective, which is basically to feed into our CAP and our SIP and our reform efforts overall.
Make sure I get this. It sounds like almost like a multi-tiered
Yeah, yeah.
approach to just make sure that incrementally we're making the steps in the right direction, depending on the outcomes of these conversations.
Right. We might find through option 2, everybody finds it sufficient enough to be able to participate this way. We're getting the information that we need. It comes into either a committee or to the greater board structure, and that is enough. And we don't have to tap the shoulder of CAPSI. But I love the idea of also at one point maybe putting closing this child welfare community roundtable and integrating those efforts into the CAPSI. But I also don't want to superimpose things. I want it to be as organic as it can be by asking and getting that feedback from CAPSI first.
Yeah. May I also offer an additional consideration that I still want to leave option 3 on the table in terms of starting with the option 2 as they explore, as they continue to develop their work and having those organic conversations and seeing CAPSI as an opportunity, as an avenue to further continue their work plan. But also, is there maybe during conversations, there might be an opportunity for reporting out or presentation or engagement at the larger community forum. I'm sure whatever work that comes out of this community, this roundtable, I think the community forum might be interested in hearing about that too. So somehow working that into the plan.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things and maybe it's also taking a look at the DFCS community forum and what we're asking them to do, and maybe adjusting some of their deliverables as well. I think you presented the corrective action plan at the last meeting, but I think there wasn't any real feedback from the group in terms of concrete information that fed the CAP. And what I originally said when you asked me, what is that deliverable? That deliverable is feedback. I want to have feedback coming from those groups, and I don't know if it's because the group is too large or because the meetings maybe are not happening as often, and they're not. We're just not stacking them in order for folks to walk with us together. And I'm not saying that it's not an effective model. I'm just, for my particular want to have CAP and SIP be having that body feed the CAP and the SIP, and if it's not doing that, I don't know if there's any modifications we need. So for the moment, I don't know if it's the size or if it's because they weren't updated. I don't know what that could be.
Let me offer one thing for consideration that might help a little bit as we're kind of talking through kind of this best landing spot. Maybe if I give the last quarterly community forum and kind of what was discussed at that meeting, and a couple different things. So this was a cast out to multiple community-based organizations, and at the same time, we also had a parallel faith-based initiative that was going on. So we collectively decided to combine those for this last community forum. So we actually held the event at a local faith-based organization, hosted it, and intentionally combined them. The focus and the topics that were discussed that day was really, we invited Wendy Wegman from UC Berkeley to go over the latest data around child welfare in Santa Clara County, and specifically breaking it down by race and equity, and really challenging the group to think about some of those root causes and what was being looked at. We also invited our partnership with behavioral health, specifically around our substance abuse issues issues for parents and resources available, because we had heard about the gaps and the need to really partner around that. And then we had a presentation of the department system improvement plan, and specifically getting some feedback around some key things. There were presentations, and then we broke into groups and got feedback on all of those items to fold into all of those things. And so I think it is conceivable to have that be a way to cast a wide net and to be able to get feedback on those things. But because it's so large, I'm not sure it's going to deliver on those items that you want, but absolutely appreciating how do we still have that going, and a both and, because I agree, and I think there's wonderful opportunities in that, and I want to cast the net large. I also know that for any of these different selections, we don't have Project Phoenix at any of these right now. Like, there are some groups not represented that we will have to do some intentional, meaningful outreach invites and figure out how that looks, and be mindful about how we're having those with lived experience as well as those that we need to make sure are heard in those spaces, and that's tougher to do in a larger space. And so I think that's what I'm grappling with in these our recommendations and going forward, but really open to a both and a report back to get us there to where we need to go.
Okay. Well, listen, I think that we can continue to, we don't need to have the one solution today, right? As long as we have a working solution. I understand that, the DFCS Community Forum could be a possibility. I also, there's no, I don't disagree with that. I do agree that it might be too large of a group, and the interests vary, and so we need to maybe line up what people are interested in. The faith-based community I know was an added guest feature, if you will, right? But what we all have in common is wanting to support children and families, right? And that's what brings us all together. And so we can continue, maybe offline, have a conversation about what this looks like, and maybe some of the options can be a hybrid opportunity for us. And we can, if you have a restructure of the DFCS Community Forum, I'd love to see what that restructure would look like so that it could work, and that Project Phoenix could be part of that. But I think if they are the only ones, then all the other ones, all the other groups, the affinity groups, some of the folks that I think were really helpful in our stakeholder hearings are on this list. I think the only other ones that I didn't see on the list was the Children's Advocacy Center. Those folks, I'd love to see them at the table, irregardless of what the table is, right? And we can continue to try to figure out what that table looks like. What I will say is that I plan to be, I plan to be very involved, and so I'm hoping, irregardless of what it looks like, that we continue to get that feedback. So whether it's CAPC, you want to ask about CAPC. In the meantime, I think we can hear some of the options coming from you, Wendy, and Sarah, about what the restructure would look like for DFCS Community Forum, if that really is potentially an opportunity. And so that's one option. The other one is in parallel to have option 2, the Child Welfare Community Roundtable, which is what we heard our stakeholders ask us to establish as a culmination of all the hearings that we had with the varied stakeholders. And having that maybe also transitioned into CAPC, right? Not that everything lands at CAPC, but we will wait to hear from you in terms of whether that fits or doesn't fit, right? I don't want it to be something that is imposed and then the council can't, there's not an interest in holding those conversations, and then that defeats the purpose of integration. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think so. I'm hearing a very deliberative process that's very inclusive and responsive to the stakeholder sessions, which is something, of course, we always want to do. I would operationally. So we make a recommendation today to pursue option 2 in relation to potential merging with CAPC in the future. Did I get that right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, what would be the next steps? Asking administration, like, would this go back to would this be a recommendation to the full board for consideration, or do we get to start the work from here?
This is already approved, correct, Greta? So this is a referral that came from myself and Supervisor Chavez, which was approved in November, actually the very last meeting that she had.
I remember that day. I was busy with something else.
Yeah, so I think this is already approved, so the way that we carry this out is, I think, really up to us to figure out.
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing the direction correctly, it sounds like for the time being, there's no, if instead the committee wanted to just move forward with one of these options, we'd then bring the file that we brought here to CSFC to the full board plus the committee's recommendation. What I'm hearing is you'd like there to be a little bit more exploration of how we can potentially better utilize CAPC, bring more folks into the conversations at CAPC where we have a really rich array of leaders, lots of important information, really important opportunity for the community to, for example, engage with CAPC as they weigh in on the SIP, make sure we're fully utilizing that forum, bringing more voices in. Also looking at option 2, making sure all of the stakeholders that were proposed for specific engagement there are included, and then come back probably to CSFC once we've done a little bit more exploration there with refined recommendations that try to merge those two paths. Is that right?
Yes, and then at the same time, because I know that option 2 is a brand-new group, I think, I hear you loud and clear, Wendy, that we have already an existing DFCS community forum. If you wanted to come back, and we could bring this back again to the committee before we take it to the full board, but I don't know if it actually needs to go to the full board, if the full board already approved. What they approved was the child welfare community roundtable is what they approved.
You know, I don't have the original referral in front of me. Definitely approve the referral for us to come back with options around creation of that, which is why we put the specific ledge file that we have right now. I think we interpreted the original referral to bring back to the board options first, starting with CSFC, so that the board could then weigh in on which path made most sense, and we've really appreciated the feedback we've gotten here today. So what I'm thinking is maybe we take the feedback that we've gotten from you today and either bring that back here for further discussion, which is what I would recommend, so we can make sure we're really bringing back something to you and also can specifically answer your question, because depending on which path we're pursuing, there might be a need for further board action. So by way of example, the options related to CAPC sort of invited the board to take a really specific look at the appointments to CAPC with an eye towards some of the issues that you flagged around voices that we really want weighing in. If we're not going that route and we're instead creating a new body, there's obviously less need for that, and we can kind of take the direction. But that was the reason why we were envisioning bringing it back to the full board.
Yeah, you know what, I thought what we had on the referral was the child welfare community roundtable as an option, but I'd love to hear, Michaela, if you have any direction.
Oh, so I was just going to offer to look up the actual
Oh,
referral.
awesome.
Yeah.
You're fabulous. Okay, so.
But I think we're fine in the meantime, and I can do that offline and get that language
Okay.
for you.
So in the meantime, it sounds like we're going to receive the report, make a motion with direction to bring back at the next CSFC meeting, just like the outcomes of further conversations to pursue option 2, informed by conversations with CAPC to see how we can merge that in the future.
I'd love that. We can work on that for the moment and see any other iterations. We can work offline, and then, of course, Michaela, reaffirming what we have. But irregardless, I think what the effort here is that we want to work with the system, so we want to make sure that it works for CAPC, irregardless of whether we mentioned you in our referral or not. we want to make sure that it works. So yeah, I'll take that
That
as
was
a
my
motion.
motion. Does that work for you, Rebecca? Oh, sorry, Jess. Sorry, I don't know why. I just improvised. Yeah.
I should have just nodded. Yes.
Okay, great. A
Awesome.
second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Sorry, Jess.
That's okay. And we took a public comment. So Vice Chairperson Yule,
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move into item number 5. And this is, what? Department of Family and Children's Services relating to the Child Welfare Corrective Action Plan. Well, welcome Sarah Duffy and Wendy Kinnear.
Thank you, Supervisor Arenas. All right, so our next item is going back and discussing where we are in Santa Clara County's Corrective Action Plan. As a reminder, this is our formal process that DFCS has entered into in agreement with the California Department of Social Services to address the 8 specific recommendations and area of improvements for us as a department. Next slide. Just as a little bit of grounding on this, we have divided these recommendations in our pathway forward in the 3 bucket items of safeguarding children, key partnerships needed to do that, and then our workforce development and partnership with our workforce to move us forward. So the first item we wanted to bring back is with regards to safeguarding children. The recommendations of the numbers on there is to link with the very long, comprehensive document that is our CAP recommendation. So this refers to items 1, 3, 5, and 6. So during this time, we have worked really intensely with the California Department of Social Services and DFCS's internal CQI team to work on our partnership tools that we need for that. Our other key partner in this is with Evident Change and DFCS staff. To date, we have finished our development of our safety plan audit tool that will be to track the appropriateness of safety plans. It is in final production stages right now, just for this committee. This is with regards to when there is a concern of a safety threat in a home and an active safety plan is needed, and we are tracking having those safety plans. This will be that deeper, more comprehensive review. Does that safety plan do what's intended? So is there a protective adult? Is it signed? Does it identify the safety threat and appropriately address that safety threat? And this tool will be used for those reviews. This, as I said, this tool has been developed. It's been given to our technology and support solutions team, and they are developing the platform so that all the data can be appropriately entered, and out of that be able to extract a dashboard and how we're doing in that tracking. We are also in the process of final development of our trainings for supervisors and managers who will be using this tool. So I will connect this with the recommendations that next steps in this will be that on a monthly basis, both supervisors and managers will be randomly pulling so many cases in order to use this tool to take a look at what's happening for that family, and that's going to be our way to make sure we're moving that needle and getting safety for children. Next slide. So our next set of series of where we are at is really around supporting and developing our workforce. So I will reiterate that we cannot do this work without our workforce. They are the ones out there doing this really hard work. And so really we have to make sure that they have what they need in order to do this. So we have just finished up during this time period our legal consultation process. We were able to launch out frequently asked questions from all of the trainings with staff. That was a request specifically back from our staff on this one. And then we have just finished our last training this week on the 25th to wrap back around with those staff who needed trainings. That doesn't account for anyone who might be out on leave or our newly hired staff. This training will be part of the academy and will be an ongoing training going forward. We will update those FAQs if anything else that comes in. I'll also just put a pin here that we did it was recommended to us, and we assured our labor partners and our staff that we would circle back around with them and see how this process is going and refine as needed. That didn't occur during this review process, but that will be occurring. And then the other thing that occurred during this review time period was additional safety planning trainings, so that all staff were trained in safety planning training. We are up to 17 trainings now to make sure our full workforce has been trained. We did trainings this month, and we will finish up those trainings next month as well. Next slide. And then the third area is building our key partnerships. So this really is that key understanding that child welfare cannot do this work alone, and we need to have our partnership to make sure that children are safe and families are supported and communities have what they need to keep kids safe. And so during this time period, we had several joint partnership meetings with managers, supervisors, and staff to go over some of our CAP deliverables. We had specific meetings with our labor partners to really engage what's the implications for them and how do we partner with them to move these things forward. We also have been in co-creation development of these tracking tools and getting staff feedback on these things, both those that are doing the work and those that are tracking it, to make sure the tools work for them in the tracking that we're doing. And this involves both tracking, coaching, supervision template, and all of our audit tools. So we met with our SEMA partners, and then we are working to meet with our SEIU partners on this. And with that, I will take any questions.
Well, actually, with that, I'll take public comment.
I have one virtual request to speak. We'll take iPhone for 2 minutes.
Yeah, the one thing we're missing from this corrective action plan, I mean, it all sounds great so far, but I mean, you have to identify the children who are being abused, so you can take whatever action you need, and you can assign whatever social worker you need to assign to them. I mean, my kids, they are, you know, like my son, he's already confirmed that my ex-wife was letting somebody rape from beginning at the age of 13, that there had been sexual abuse, sexual contact between two of the children, there had been unnecessary bathing with the parents, with a person, and the children, and also there was abrupt changes in personality. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist that with all these things, you know, you go in and you do a screening and identify, is there a problem or isn't there a problem, and then take it from there. But, you know, like, you could give another disclaimer, but I've called the hotline, I emailed these people personally, I've done all these things, and still there's nothing happening. And you could say you're concerned and when you hear these things, but I mean, apparently not when nothing's happening. I mean, we want Wendy Kinnear-Rausch to say, that is icky. I feel sick to my stomach. I'm about to vomit here on the dais. But this is not gonna happen. She's gonna be calm and collected for the rest of the presentation. My kids are not gonna get the help that they need. The sexual abuse is gonna continue. And that's because, you know, there are backroom deals with people, attorneys, and I mean, you could say, make a complaint about a judge, but this is on the county. The county needs to do something, not the Commission for Judicial Performance. It's the county, and the county is just failing my kids. And I can't believe we're still ignoring this. Thank you for your time.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Jess. Okay, so I'm going to look to my vice chair for questions or comments.
No, I really appreciate staff's continued work on this, and also your constant efforts to communicate with my office as well. No real discussion points. I guess I'm just curious as to, and I think I may have missed this if it's already in the report. Like, how many trainings do we have left? How many folks are we looking at to wrap this up?
So that's a complex question because there's lots of trainings built into this. I can tell that we just did our last training on legal consultation. I'm waiting for the final to make sure we had everyone attend. Anyone who wouldn't have attended would have been if they were unfortunately out sick, anything like that. So we will have wrap back arounds on one-offs on that. The safety planning training, we have about a handful of people left. I think it's around 30 or 40 left to train in trainings that will occur in March, and I think we'll have 2 trainings on that. But built into our corrective action plan is a variety of next steps on training that do deeper dives in areas needed. March will really be filled, and you'll hear about this in the next update. The March update will bring what occurred in the last couple weeks, which is really one-on-one trainings that are occurring with supervisors and managers, building up leadership skills so that they have what they need in order to do those audit tools, conversations with staff, track things, and move our needle. So it's hard for me to answer a specific question on how many trainings, because at every level, different trainings are built in that are meant to get us to where we need to go. I will tell you that also built into this plan are surveys and feedback loops to make sure that the trainings that we are delivering are doing what's intended. So one of the things we heard loud and clear from CDSS is making sure that there's good, strong feedback loops on training. If it's not as intended, if it's not delivering, how do we have wrap back arounds that really listen to that? An example of that just occurred in this last month is most of our trainings have been really aimed at the front end. Our emergency response social workers going out and doing safety assessments and risk assessments. And we heard loud and clear from our staff that really do kind of that ongoing work. So whether they're court services or voluntary services and they're working with families, they need to continue to assess and work with them. And they really gave us feedback that this is really good, you're doing all these trainings, but they're really focused on the front end. And what about those of us that are doing the work ongoing? So we specifically modified that training to address them and just rolled this out. And I just was getting some initial feedback this week that they're like, thank you, this is what we needed. We felt like we were heard and listened to. So I want to hear more of that to make sure we're open to that feedback and modifying as we're going.
I also wanted to add, next month, I think we will bring a dashboard that shows all of the training that has happened. So I got a preview of it yesterday, and it's kind of in final development stages, but it has like all of the trainings, the total number of staff by manager, supervisor, and social worker, and then it shows the remaining staff to be trained. So it's a really helpful tool, and it actually also includes some links to survey data too. So we're creating like a very nice training dashboard that will be, I think, quite useful both in showing progress in the CAP, but also for managers and supervisors to use to see how everyone's doing in their unit. So, so we'll be hopefully previewing that next month as well.
Thank you for that very fulsome response. I look forward to the dashboard next meeting at the next update, and just to see us be able to wrap this part up of the CAP. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So I know you presented the safety plan audit tool, and what I'm wondering about it is if it'll look at the safety plans. I guess I'm wondering, is it looking back or is it looking in the moment? Is it looking at safety plans that are that have already been done, or is it helping social workers improve their safety plans and the follow-up on safety plans? I guess I'm trying to figure that out.
That's a really good question, Supervisor Arenas, and I would say it's probably a bit of a both and. It's going to be a point in time, so it will be a pool of open referrals or open cases during that time that have an active safety plan. When we pull that, they could be in the process of being closed or being refined. It could also be used to be able to pull retroactively back as well, but the thought is that we are pulling so many every month in order to actively be looking at those cases that have safety plans and then be able to self-adjust in that moment. The feedback loops that this will be vital for is both to self-adjust in the moment if we need to for that family, but then also to see where we're having gaps, misses, so we can circle back around. Is this a process issue? Is this a training issue? Is this what we have written and it's not well understood, so that we can respond accordingly, as well as to get feedback to staff if things are going really well and we're moving the needle on that. And so those will be all things that will be built in. I would imagine potentially by our next report out, we can bring back what that CQI tool looks like. We just wouldn't have built in, right? We just wouldn't have the data and be doing it, but we can bring back that tool for this committee, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And so you said it would pull this up for the cases that have safety plans, but I guess would it identify cases that don't, or pull up cases that don't have safety plans? How does the tool actually do that? Or is that manually a manager pulling up? How do they choose?
Yeah, so we would, in order to get at what cases we need to pull, we would be pulling the universe of what is. So there would be 3 categories that cases would fall into. They would fall into being safe, meaning there is no safety threat. We don't need a safety plan. Safe with a plan, or unsafe. Unsafe means that child is out of that home. So obviously we're always pulling that report to make sure, is that child out of that home? Do we have interventions? Safe with a plan would mean the only way that child can remain in that home is that we have an active, vital safety plan. That would be what we would then be using that report to do that deeper dive and using that CQI tool for.
Got it. Okay. And then if that child is safe, no safety plan? Okay. I know that was kind of obvious, but I just wanted to make sure I did it. And you talked about the CQI review tools to continue to monitor. I think it's active cases, not retroactively, or correct me.
The plan is, right now, the random pulls are going to be for our universe of cases, but we can use that tool to be able to go back retroactively as well. So it can be both, but our plan is to be monitoring every month a random pull of open cases.
Open cases, okay. And my question was a little bit broader in terms of what other CQI tools are you using to monitor actively versus retroactively?
The tools that are being created that are in our corrective action plan, the next ones that are, one that's already been developed as well and is going to production is our CFT tool, so our Child and Family Treatment Team Meeting tools. So this tool will really evaluate how we are using that teaming process, who is sitting around the table. One of the theories was we absolutely need to make sure that a family has a network in order to do the work that they need to do. So this tool will really evaluate who is sitting around that table and the effectiveness of our CFT process. 2 other tools that will be developed is our structured decision-making safety assessment tool. So how well are we doing that safety assessment for families? And that's the tool that determines, like I said, safe with a plan, or unsafe. So how well are we using that tool? The next one will be our structured decision-making risk assessment tool. So that is the likelihood of abuse in the future. And so we'll have a CQI tool on that one as well.
Great. So the SDM safety assessment, is that the same thing as the safety plan audit tool?
No, but they are connected. So the safety plan, so the SDM safety tool evaluates whether or not we got it right. So whether it was safe with a plan, or
I see.
unsafe.
It's just the assessment.
Yes.
For
yes.
it. And
Yep.
then the same thing, the SDM risk assessment is just the assessment process. Did you get it right?
Yes.
But, so I guess I look forward to seeing what is the CQI tool to ensure that you got it right. But that's part of the next conversation, so I won't ask you about that. But this particular safety plan audit tool is exactly what it just says, and the ones that are coming up are the CFT treatment tool and the SDM safety assessment and the SDM risk assessment. So I look forward to seeing what those look like. Sarah?
I think we can attach those as they're finalized, so that you can actually have them as a reference attached to the file. So I think we can attach the ones that are completed and approved, and we'll just continue to do it until, are there 4 total? Until all 4 are done.
Great. Well, one of the questions that I had, and I haven't seen a report come up on this, but I had asked previously for the safety plan audit tool, just for the safety plan, I wanted to know how do we come to choose that particular tool? Was it, why did we choose it? And how is it going to help us based on what we needed to do in terms of the corrective action plan and the SIP?
Absolutely, and there's actually 5 tools. So the final tool that will be created will be a CQI tool around our visits. So how well are we engaging with families and going out to see both the parents and the youth and getting the information that's needed. And all of the tools that were created are all core mandated areas of the work that we do, and we're all identified areas as needing improvement in our corrective action plan. And so these tools are being created so that we have an appropriate way to evaluate how we're doing, determine where we need doing well, where we need to improve on, and then be able to actively make that improvement. And then, as I said earlier, our partners in this is the CQI team at CDSS at the state, Evident Change that has created the SDM tools, and we're also working with UC Berkeley and then our internal technology team.
Isn't it a conflict, though, if Evident Change created the SDM tool and now they're going to have to make a tool to make sure that the SDM is assessing accurately?
I would look at it, we want the tool to be valid. There's actually a supervisory tool that's built into the toolkit for structured decision making that supervisors can use in order to walk through and evaluate how the social worker is done. And we've actually built on that one because we want to make sure we get at all the data we need to really have those feedback loops. So we actually use that as a basis along with conversations with the CQI team at the state to expound upon that. So I would look at Evident Change as our expert, our subject matter expert in this, to build on what they know, why it was designed, so that we could then design what we need for Santa Clara County.
Wendy, I was just going to add something that I think I learned from, maybe it was Sarah or maybe it was someone in DFCS, but I think it goes a little bit to Supervisor Ardenez's question, which is for a lot of these tools, what I understand is that the state has selected specific vendors to then be able to actually test whether the tools work using the actual child welfare data. And so the state has to approve someone seeing the real case information. And so we're a little limited in who we can work with in this space because the state has selected Evident Change and allowed them to access the confidential records needed to test and develop the tools. So we work within those constraints.
Yeah, no, I understand it. It creates kind of a monopoly, if you will, because it's so restricted and we have to be so careful. But I'm glad, we continue to ask questions and we'll see where it gets us, and hopefully you'll give us the feedback that we need as well. If Evident Change is not getting it quite right, because I know that there is also a data or a CQI unit within DFCS, right? And I think the last time that we had a public hearing, they were talking about how some of the changes that they were making, I think they were condensing some of the protocols. And I don't know what happened with that. Is the reduction or the streamlining of the protocols, because I think there was a concern about maybe there was too much of a reduction, that it's not providing enough guidance on protocols for those folks who are new, and what was the right balance. What was the intention of shaving down some of the protocol direction?
Yeah, so those corrective action plan recommendations are around our policies and procedures and instructions, written instructions for staff and how that goes. And one of the feedback that came out of the CDSS report was that social workers did not feel like they were getting the information they needed to be able to do the job that they needed to do. There were chapters that were outdated. There were chapters where they had a hard time finding what was needed at the end of the day. So the recommendations are really around streamlining, making sure it's clear and comprehensive. Social workers have the direction they need, not too much, not enough. And that's really an area where we absolutely have to lean into the subject matter experts. Those that are in those areas using those policies and procedures are our users, and so our recommendations and the ways we're rolling that out really leans heavily into our subject matter experts on that, which are the social workers and supervisors in those areas.
And how are we getting, because you're looking for the Goldilocks, right? Not too much, not too little. How do we know we've Goldilocked it? What kind of feedback how are we capturing that feedback?
So one of the ways that we will be doing that is we will be launching, in partnership with our Office of Research and Evaluation out of the SSA office, we will be engaging in surveys that really give us that feedback. And then we are engaging in direct feedback whenever we roll out those policies and procedures. So like the legal consultation policy is a perfect example. We've rolled that out. We will then go back and get additional feedback later. How is this working? Did we get it right? Do we need to fine tune it even further? Is what's written in policy and what we trained on really happening in practice, or do we need to refine that further? And that really involves conversations with our workforce, right, to get that feedback so that we can refine in real time and not, years later.
Well, I'll ask Sarah, I know that you were participating in some of the the listening sessions, if you will. Will you have another listening session to figure out whether, just anecdotally, are we getting some of this back? And, I know that presents its pros and cons, right? Because it's anecdotal, but maybe all information is anecdotal. How will you have some varied ways of capturing feedback?
That's a great question. I think at this stage, we're in the sort of early stages of working on the policy review and figuring it out. But I would imagine that, and Wendy, please correct me if this is not what you're thinking, as we roll it out for different areas of the department and we work with the subject matter experts kind of day to day on it, we then bring it back in some kind of draft form to the units that will work with those policies and get their feedback. How and when exactly that will happen in the process, I'm not quite sure, because we're we're sort of mapping all of these steps out right now. That's where we are in the policy review, because there are a number of policies. But I think the subject matter expert will be kind of the liaisons to those areas. And then I would imagine that to get that feedback, we would go back to the units that are using those specific policies. Wendy, does that make sense to you?
Yes, and we're project mapping that out, as Sarah said, right now. So I think that's something we can bring back to this committee on how that will look. And if we don't get it quite right out the gate, that will definitely be something we can revisit.
Right, and I think you're also relying on the LA County's operational policies and procedures, their format, right? What would you say are the strengths of that?
I would say that, and there is actually some alignment within DFCS and LA's policies and procedures. We originally modeled some of what we did in Santa Clara County from those. So I think that some of the things that's helpful is they have less sort of categories and combining information, and there is less is more concept in some areas. And so I think that's where we're really challenging ourselves. The other thing they've done that we need to streamline a little bit more is making clear we have our policies and procedures separated out. So what is the actual policy we need to follow on this? And then what does the handbook look like, if you will? So like the extra things. One of the things that got away from Santa Clara County is policies don't change very much, right? We get our all county letters and what's the law that we need to follow. That doesn't change that often. What does change sometimes is the best practices and ways to tackle those. And so one of the things LA has got a handle on is really putting as kind of a extra or a handbook, like here's our practice guide on this as a separate. Santa Clara County really weaved that into all of our policies and procedures. So really we're just pulling that out so that it's in a user-friendly way for us to change it out should that change a year from now, 2 years from now. So ease of access of those things.
Nice. So it sounds like a practice guide, like a user-friendly, something that people can actually hold, have it at their desk or something of the sort. I'd love to see what that looks like for the CAN Center because, we took a visit at the CAN Center, and what I understood was that there wasn't an actual established protocol that everybody utilizes in the way that they carried out or annotated their, what they're hearing from the caller is slightly different for each social worker, right? So I'd love to see what that looks like. I don't think that there's anything in our corrective action plan that talks about some of the CAN Center hotline issues, one of them being that I think more of the clerical staff were answering the questions, and that because they're the one, I mean, not answering the questions, but answering the calls, and as they forward those calls to the social workers, I think if I can't quite remember the process of this, but there was kind of a reset of the of that call if there was a 24-hour commitment to call back, right? But there was something that reset that 24-hour that was very technical, and that really concerned me. And I'd love to see how we can connect with the CAN Center folks, because it all begins with those calls and how we process them. And from what I understood, and it was very clear, although uncomfortable and a little awkward, was, you know, clerical staff saying, hey, we're kind of taking on your job as takers of these calls, and you're making us responsible for them, and we give these messages over to you, and somehow there's something that gets triggered to kind of reset and not reflect accurately that we're not calling back residents or callers back in a timely manner. And so I'd love to see, I think I've asked this question before on the dais as a board, collectively as a board. I want to know what is it that we're doing to monitor some of those issues that we heard from the listening sessions that we know are, I don't know that it's been resolved. I don't know that we've decided that clerical is now the folks who are going to answer, even though there's social workers who were supposed to be assigned simply because they're off on, attending another call, and how much time is allowed for them to be off kind of the hook, if you will, from phone calls to process one call and to get back on. I'd like to see what that looks like, because like I said, it all begins with calls. We at the same time, we're hearing from CBOs say, hey, I'm not getting calls back, and the calls that I'm getting back are like 2 a.m. Who's going to want to call back the CAN Center at 2 a.m? And so technically we might be checking things off, but it doesn't mean that it's working for folks so that they can continue to feed the system and be responsive to calls. And so I'd love to see, and I'm hoping that I can hear a motion to accept and receive this report, and then to also follow up on this item that it's a question that has already been on the dais as a board, collectively as a board, but I'd like to see what that feedback is, and if it's an off-agenda report, then it's an off-agenda report, and while we reconnect all of this back to the board. So is that clear? I'm asking for the CAN Center report on calls, on the number of calls that clerical staff are responding versus social workers, and the time frame that is taking them to be responsive, some of those callback rates.
Yeah,
And none of this is in the corrective action plan. It just hasn't fit into the corrective action plan, even though it is a fundamental issue. I mean, this is basically the first step that people take to get into the system.
yeah. Well, I'm happy to make a motion to receive the report today and to have the CAN Center agendized at a future CSFC meeting. I think in addition to those questions, Supervisor Innes, it'll be really good just for us to check in on how the CAN Center is doing. I remember that at one point in time, the CAN Center was using a whiteboard to track calls and make assignments.
Yes, I heard from Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, and I know that and then also at one point we didn't have a centralized, we didn't have the same type of number that we have today that is easy to share, right? It was like something that you had to have like on the back of like a piece of paper or like saved in your phone. versus the acronym today. So I think it's timely to have a check-in with the CAN Center. So motion to receive the report with a request to agendize to bring back a future report, status report, inclusive of the questions that the committee has raised today regarding the CAN Center.
I'll second that. And if there's any information in between now and when we can actually agendize this for our next CSFC meeting, that we have this on a off-agenda report as a friendly amendment, because I do think that we need to actually have it on agenda and talk about it. It just happens anyways.
Happy to accept the friendly amendment.
Thank you. Okay, so we are, and I second that as well. And so Jess, would you take us through?
Vice Chairperson Jung,
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm going to surprise everybody by asking the Department of Family and Children Services to come and talk to us about the social worker pilot program. I think this is a really exciting pilot program. Is all of the work that we're doing is absolutely, I'm grateful for all of it, and look forward to hearing about this one. Sarah Duffy and Wendy Kinnear, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm going to give Wendy a brief break, and although she's quite familiar with this pilot as well. And yes, we're very excited about this, especially given the partnership with schools for this one that we're going to propose. So I will provide an update on what we're calling the CANS community-based social worker pilot tentatively. And I'll start off, next slide please, with a little bit of information on the background, purpose, and design. So the CANS community-based social worker pilot originated actually through CANS staff feedback and advocacy. In particular, we had one very visionary social worker who pitched this idea based on their years of experience and observation that callers were often not describing abuse or neglect, but instead described families in need of resources. And those calls frequently came from educators, law enforcement, and hospitals. So what we're proposing here is a pilot that allows social workers to help educators in this first phase identify when families need support and resource connections, and to assist when there is a suspected case of abuse or neglect and a report to be made. So through education and training, the pilot program will help school personnel and students' families by providing an in-depth understanding of child welfare system practices and fundamental policies, and provide improved training opportunities on mandated reporting. We are really hoping that the community involvement will help ease some of the stigmas associated with child welfare and encourage families to engage with DFCS and the county for services and resources that will help alleviate and prevent future risk and safety issues for children. Next slide, please. Just really quickly, in terms of selecting schools to partner with, we're looking at the resource need and data showing zip codes with the highest child abuse referrals. This really led to kind of setting some criteria around where to station social workers. And so we'll be looking at high-need communities and school sites that are interested in partnering to provide training resources and services. So this is just a map, and you can see the zip codes with the highest numbers of referrals. So what we're thinking is we'll start with 2 pilot schools, and we'll locate one in San Jose and likely the second one in Gilroy, just based on where we see the highest number of referrals. Next slide, please. And this is, it's a brief presentation. This is the implementation timeline that we're looking at. So we want to start by continuing to talk with and listen to DFCS social workers in the CANS and prevention units to help us design this. We are meeting with schools and partners, and we are hoping in the next month or so to identify a school site that wants to partner with us, or 2 sites that want to partner with us in this first year. We'll finalize the design, and we will partner with labor on the staff needed for the program. And we will also hopefully identify key community-based organizations that can help with resources that have natural existing relationships in the community and with the school sites. And then in the second phase, we'll develop an MOU with schools. We will identify and train both the social workers and partner staff at schools, and we will prepare and the space for the social workers to locate in community. And then following the launch of the program at the 2 school sites, we'll engage in discussions with stakeholders really continually to gather feedback, assess the pilot. We are hoping that one site will open at the beginning, will be ready to open in August at the beginning of the school year. It's ambitious, but we feel like with existing relationships with certain schools, we can find a good partner. And the second would open sometime between August and January of the 25-26 school year. So that is the plan. It's definitely one that's very, we're working very closely with social workers that are interested in seeing this in the community. And I'll take any questions. Wendy can also add to this.
Thank you. If there's nothing more, Wendy, we'll check with public comment, or would you like to add something now? Wonderful. Jess?
I have one virtual request.
We'll have 2 minutes for that.
iPhone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, I mean, on paper, this sounds like a great program to implement, but I just have one question. I mean, how are we going to train social workers to identify the difference between needing resources and when the county needs to step in and protect the child? I mean, like, let's just take my example and let's have you guys decide. If somebody has reported that he'd been raped beginning at the age of 13, and that there was one child rubbing his genitalia against the buttocks of a 2-year-old, or that there was unnecessary bathing between an adult and 2 of the children, and there's all these crazy changes in personality. I mean, do you guys think that we need resources for these kids, like food stamps or I don't know what? Or does the county need to do a safety plan or some sort of assessment or screening? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, because look, I mean, if we can't decide here that screening is needed, then how are you guys going to go ahead and then train all these social workers to make that differentiation? I mean, please, let's think about these things. And Sarah Duffy, I mean, why are you not slamming your hand against the dais and saying, hey, not on my watch. This isn't going to happen on my watch. We're going to change this right now. I'm going to get a screening for these kids. She's not going to do it. Wendy Kinnear-Rausch isn't going to do it. So what kind of example is that setting for all future social workers who are going to collaborate with the county to help identify child abuse? I mean, please, guys, use a little bit more logic in this. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. And I would ask the caller if you could please reserve your comments for board members, and that would be Supervisor Young and myself, and not to staff members. I apologize for not interrupting sooner. All right, I'm going to look to my vice chair.
Yes, I love this presentation and report. Really great work, and I'm really excited about this. I think the direction of the county, as reflected in some of the other items on this agenda today, points towards this movement of meeting people, families, and our most vulnerable where they are. So I really love this pilot. And Supervisor Arenas, just want to thank you for your leadership in bringing this referral forward with Supervisor Chavez in the past. So I get to I appreciate getting to be a part of seeing the implementation now. I wholeheartedly want to support this pilot program and really would love to make sure that we can continue receiving updates, implementation, status reports, especially with this ambitious timeline that we have, to have our first social worker in the school district starting at the beginning of the school year. So I'll turn it over to Chair Arenas, but I'm ready to make a motion to receive the report with a request for status updates at the next CSFC meeting.
Wonderful. I'll go ahead and second that, and just thank you for the work that you're doing. This is really in connection with the the folks over at the Can Center, and I think there's, oh gosh, Maxine and somebody, one of my team members, will have to remind me of Maxine's last name, but I want to make sure that I recognize King. Thank you. I heard that. Thank you. Because I think this started with her proposal, and one of the visits that we had at the Can Center, she also included, it was a very long visit, but they need to be, because all of these conversations are complex and they reflect the needs of our families, and unfortunately at the same time require a lot of work on our behalf. And so I'm really grateful that we're taking this different kind of approach. I'd love to see us continue to connect this idea with schools, the way that you laid it out, Sarah. I really appreciate that we're starting with some of the zip codes that have the highest referrals, and in South County, that is unfortunately Gilroy. And you know, one of the things that I was talking about earlier today, and this comes from Dr. Williams, who's and the head of the Chan Public Health Center with Harvard. He talked about, not at the panel, but I used some of the research that he has done to talk about racial differences in environment and obviously in how well children and families fare based on place, right? So one of the things that he talked about is obviously, in order to build resiliency, we have to look at some of these and some of the ways that we mitigate for adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. With resiliency, how do we build resiliency? And looking at the environment and having things be place-based, as we have learned dearly through the pandemic, that we need to be place-based. We need to meet people where they're at. And we, of course, have to take into account the socioeconomic status of those folks. And one of the research highlights that he had was that out of the 171 largest cities in America, there isn't not one city where whites live in equal condition to those of blacks. So the worst urban context in which whites reside, this is directly from him, reside in, is considerably better than the average context of black communities. And we can extend that to black and brown communities, because as we know, in this county, our black community is at a very low percentage compared to brown communities. And because of redlining, we all are living together. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We live among the people that look like us. We like going to doctors that look like us and receive services from folks, and go to the stores from people that look like us. But in doing so, also, we naturally segregate, and research shows that in those communities where there are more white communities, there's more resources, and with more resources, we have opportunities to build resiliency and to tap into things that would allow for us to mitigate some of those ACEs and some of those adverse childhood experiences. And so I just thought it was very fitting that this was, this is something that I talked about earlier today, and this being something that is now on our CSFC agenda, because this is very place-based, right? Very place-based, and I just want to once again thank Maxine King for initiating this, and for all of you, Sarah, Wendy, and Dan, for taking this into account and really listening to some of those folks who I think you've called experts in the field, right? These are the experts in the field, and this is something that I feel like is really missing and together with another data point, when we were coming out of the pandemic, one of the superintendents in a very highly impacted school district said, you know, I'm soon enough we are going to be overwhelmed with CPS reports, right? Because we know that our children haven't been in contact with somebody that they may trust that is outside of their family unit or their living unit. And when they do, we are going to hear about some of these reports. And so going straight into this community-driven or community place-based approach, to me, is so right on the money in terms of being responsive to what our community needs are, and creating some of our own best practices and what we understand to be a best practice anywhere in the USA, right? But it's certainly here. So I look forward to seeing what this looks like. I want us to continue to explore, you know, having this be a school idea, that we are located at a school site. I know that they're not open, you know, 365, 24/7, but we have, over the years, especially since the pandemic, evolved our schools, even if it is with some resistance and tension, having them be the hubs in our community that we naturally see them to be, but are not equipped because they're limited in terms of resources and what their focus is in obviously it's all around education, but we all understand that if a child is so stressed and so traumatized, they can't possibly focus on learning. It's just not, it's not going to happen. And so that's where we come in terms of our safety net services. And so anyways, with all that, I just want to really encourage you to continue to explore community centers at the same time that we're exploring the school idea, and for us to continue to have listening sessions. These listening sessions, I think, you know, everybody has an opinion and everybody has a different way that they think that we should carry out our work, including myself and my board members. And the difference here is we are elected to contribute this way, and it's up to us to figure out the best research, the best practices, and form partnerships with you and our community members to do so. And so anyways, I look forward to seeing how this looks in Gilroy. Offline, I'd love to see how we can figure out all of the details. I'm excited because for many of our families, transportation is a big issue, and sometimes some of our families are the kind that they want to in person report things or be or interact with folks in an in-person format in order to feel safe, and so anyways, I just thank you all around. This is a great track. A great responsive way to listen to our field experts. And so I hope that everybody sees this as an opportunity to continue to contribute in a meaningful way when you have these kinds of proposals. Our leadership took this on and carried it through, and we're moving forward with it. So I think this is just absolutely fabulous. Anyways, I've gone on, but I just thought it was really, there was a reason why there was a couple of things toggled together today for me, and I just wanted to have this opportunity to express that, so thank you.
Yeah, and I love that this came from a member of our team, right? That there was an observation and a recommendation for next steps, and to be able to bring more resources onto school campuses. I just want to add to the points you've made, Chairwoman, that you know, no matter what, our parents take their kids to school, right? Like that's where folks will be. That's where natural hubs of resources, information sharing, the informal mom network in the parking lot, right? Like it's I'm just really excited about this and look forward to seeing the next steps of implementation. But once it gets started too, like understanding like how people are receiving it, like like how administrators, teachers, and you know, like how can we continue building upon it. But that's for the future. So thank you. I think motion made, seconded.
We're just going to move forward. Just take us across the finish line.
Vice Chairperson Young?
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we are moving to item number 7. This is, to receive the report from the Office of County Executive relating to the Vietnamese American Service Center. Welcome.
Jess, we might need your help
Sorry.
turning on the mics.
Go ahead and try.
Good afternoon. Okay, mine works.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Hani Tran, and I am the Senior Manager of the Vietnamese American Service Center. I am so proud to be sharing the panel and the spotlight with my colleagues today, some of the leadership from the VAS's co-located departments, on the occasion of our first annual report being published. I am grateful for their partnership and collaboration so that together we can deliver such critical county services to at the VAS. And together we'll be presenting highlights from the impact report. So the core operations team handles the administration of the building as well as the core needs of our community: service navigation, translation. We also work with other county and community partners to bring new programs to meet emerging needs of our community. My team aims to maintain a high level of customer service so that we can, have a high level of engagement with our community throughout the year.
Good afternoon. Oh, good afternoon. Oh, good. Okay. Good afternoon. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Obelo. I am the Director for Adult and Older Adult System of Care and Behavioral Health. And behavioral health is a very integral part of the VASC, and we've been a big collaborator as well as a partner since its inception in 2022. Our team over there provides mental health services, crisis intervention, various group activities, outreach, and engagement. Referral for our team usually comes through the individuals who walk into VASC or through transfers from ambulatory care or also our behavioral health call center. For FY24 or 2024, in fiscal year 2024, we served about 3,608 individuals, and 312 of them were unduplicated clients, meaning the individuals that we were seeing for the first time. So I'll pass it on to Franco.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Franco Germanario. I'm a health center manager in the ambulatory division of our health system. I have the pleasure of having joined my colleagues here from the inception of the center, and I represent today the medical services, dental services, pharmacy and lab services. And I think it's easy to say the numbers speak for themselves. You'll see all of the numbers in a positive fashion. We've been able to add providers, maybe not as quickly as we had hoped, but we have some traction now, and we've added a provider last year, one coming up here in March, and then another slated in August, which should have us reach pretty much our capacity for physicians and providers. I want to thank Margaret for collaboration with specialty behavioral health. It's something that I don't experience in the other health centers that I manage, and I think it's made a pretty significant difference in our ability to serve our patients. Another thing I wanted to add is, as a manager, a seasoned manager, old, I see how our other centers, function and how we serve those patient populations, and I can see the degree of non-compliance and compliance among the patient population. But I've seen very positive results, actually special results here at VASC, where our medical dental team, even our collaboration with specialty behavioral health, has had a significantly positive result on the health of the patient population that we serve, which is predominantly Vietnamese American, but others as well. And I'm comparing this data to what I see in some of our other primary care clinics. And the VASC team, which includes all of these services, outperforms all of the other ambulatory services with regard to quality metrics, no-show rate, all of these things which have to be the result of this, the aim of and the mission of this center to provide culturally sensitive, linguistically sensitive care. So I wanted to just make a personal observation that there's been some wonderfully positive results. And again, I'm not going to read the numbers to you. I think they speak for themselves. But go ahead and go to the next slide. Pharmacy doing a wonderful job. You can see that they've increased their services by 78% year over year, or at least last year over 23 over 24. Immunizations administered, so they are administering immunizations to patients, predominantly to patients who are not paneled. So it's a great service for those who may not have paneled services with our clinic, because most of the vaccinations and medications and things that are administered in our clinic are to our paneled patients. Laboratory, another partner of ours, whose services are also increasing gradually along with our growth in our medical clinic and our dental clinic, and our dental services as well. So now, into our third year, or at least the end of our third year, everything's really kind of hitting on all cylinders with, only positive things to look forward to actually during this coming year and or by the end of the year. So that's my presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vandana Puri, and I'm the program manager for Senior Nutrition Program. The Senior Nutrition Program at VASC was launched in December 2021, and starting with just 100 meals to go. We all know that changed very rapidly. So in July 2023, indoor congregate dining was introduced to our participants in order to give them an opportunity to socialize and dine in. A robust virtual socialization program was implemented for clients who continue to pick meals to go. VASC is the only site in our county that actually allows a to-go meal to be picked up. Participants are able to reserve meals in advance, in person, or via phone. And it is our only site that serves Vietnamese vegetarian and non-vegetarian options. The numbers are too small for me to read on the screen, but they're a lot, I will say that. So more than 500 meals.
We'll have that in the record.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a lot.
So 545 meals are served on a daily basis, and VASC is the only site in our county that also home delivers Vietnamese ethnic meals to homebound older adults.
Good afternoon, Ilona Betkolia Givergis, DEB's director. DEBS is honored to have been one of the first partners for VASC since 2021. Our scope of work has increased from the first day we started at VASC, and Currently, our on-site staff are providing nearly all the services that we provide in our other sites at VASC. We have 2 staff, full-time bilingual staff, that are seeing clients that walk in through VASC, and those clients do not have to travel to any other offices to receive the services. Our numbers are up there. Last fiscal year, we served 2,253 clients. We gave out over 500 applications and received nearly 400 applications back that were registered. And we continue to partner with WASC through our quarterly meetings to see what the need is and how we can assist. Thank you.
So our VASC leadership team has quarterly meetings to plan at a high level. We've been focused on aligning across our departments and setting goals so that we can maximize our impact. And here you'll see our goals for the upcoming year. On this slide, you'll see new health and wellness programs we've brought to the VASC since October, the last time we reported out to this committee. We work to bring new programs to address a variety of health needs, including substance abuse and diabetes. One of our goals is to increase youth engagement. Here are some of the programs we've brought to the VASC in the last several months: preserving family stories, sustainability, and coding. Our aim is to engage youth in different ways. Last month, we launched our mini library. It really livens up our third floor space, and I am so grateful for this partnership with the Santa Clara County Library District. We continue to host a variety of community engagement activities at the VASC. Last fall, we hosted Dia de los Muertos, a community stakeholder meeting, and a toy distribution during the holidays. And in January, we hosted events for Lunar New Year. I am so proud that our annual Hallmark event drew more than 1,900 community members, which is the highest attendance rate to date. This upcoming April, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Black April, which set in motion waves of refugees leaving Vietnam and resettling, including here in Santa Clara County, VASC is honored to host a number of activities for our community, and I look forward to sharing highlights from those events at our next report out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to look to Jess to see if we have any public comment.
We have no request to speak.
Wonderful. Okay, so we will go to my vice chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to staff for the presentation today. I can't believe that it was only 3 years ago that we opened the doors of the Vietnamese American Service Center. And can I just say, like, major FOMO vibes right now. Like, I was part of the original team, and can I just share that what I see today far exceeds what we were dreaming of, because this was a great experiment, right? Great experiment of place-based, community-based, community-informed, everything co-located services, integrated service model. And in a lot of the startup conversations was really, how do we make this work? How do we make the systems talk to each other? Oh, how do we make the system? I do that all the time. How do we make the systems talk to each other? How do we have seamless integration? And, you know, Hanyi, when you were presenting, and Margaret, when you were, sorry, Hanyi and Margaret, when you were both presenting about just and Franco too, the numbers exceeding expectations and referrals from ambulatory. Ambulatory care is the clinic on site, so the referrals are down the hall from each other. Wow. So instead of walking someone out of the building, or instead of like sending them home to make another appointment, the referrals are like literally down the hall, a couple doors, to have that immediate transition from ambulatory care to behavioral health services. And Vanessa, I just want to give you a shout out that, you know, prior to your ascension in the county organization, you worked with Vandana, and really the senior nutrition program we see at the VASC today, the largest in the county's history, is really your brainchild and the product of yours and Vandana's work. And it's a 6-day-a-week program. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the daily numbers, it's 6 days a week. Operationally, I'm super excited about what's to come. I understand that we still have challenges with parking. That's a good problem to have, right? Whenever, yeah. I mean, I know, it doesn't feel great in the moment, but the fact that we have so many clients coming, that parking now is well, it was always a challenge, and it's only gotten bigger. I think, Hanyi, one of the offline updates I received from you is that our senior nutrition program there now has 5,000 enrollees. but the capacity is still close to 500 meals a day. So I sing your praises, and I'm not asking so much for a report back right now, but want to put on the horizon this resource, this type of integrated service model should be available to every single community of high need in our county. To have community-based, place-based, integrated services model where everyone who's working there looks like you, speaks your language, understands the cultural nuances. I think that's a formula for success. And that integrated service model, I guess what I'm asking of staff is, as we continue moving through the growth of the VAS, what can be lifted as a model that could be implemented in that place-based format throughout the county and communities of high need? And ideally, how can that be placed in existing clinics? How can that be placed in new builds as we continue to expand our healthcare system, and what that can look like? And then on the senior nutrition side, we see how incredibly successful culturally competent menu design and cuisine can be. How can we integrate that into the broader senior nutrition program strategy, where there's other cuisines, right? South Asian, Japanese, Mexican cuisine in specific communities that we know the demographic prefers that or would be more inclined towards that. So I'm excited to see that's on the horizon. So as future VAS reports come back, those would be the type of questions and issues that I'll be touching upon. And I also want to just share for my chair. When I was working at the VAS, and still now, we hear this feedback, right? I got yelled at all the time by my seniors, all the time. And I'm just like, why are you yelling at me? Like, I'm doing everything for you. And they're like, oh no. They took pity on me for 2 seconds. I go, it's because this is home. This is like home. Yelling at you is like yelling at my granddaughter. So parking jams, great. Being yelled at, actually not a bad thing here. And I would love to see this just broaden out, taking this as this great demonstration, this great experiment, and lifting out a model that can be replicated throughout the county. And when I say that, I also think about your Latino health assessment, like what lessons learned can be carried over to help bring the same type of outcomes for our Latino community. So with that, I yield, but just thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your work in this. And I can't believe it's only been 3 years. To more parking jams and yelling.
Well, then, if that's the metric of success, we are. We should be yelling. Congratulations to all of you who've touched the VASC one way or another, because this is a sign. It really is a sign of success, and is what I was talking about in the previous item, which is place-based. Well, we know that one of the best practices is to have something all-inclusive, to have something super integrated, and it is wonderful to see that one of the largest Vietnamese communities outside of Vietnam that sits here in our own county is also having the kind of responsive and supportive services that we find at the VASC, right? And it's I think I don't know if there's anything like that anywhere else, right? In older cities or more well-established communities, and so I think it's wonderful. I think it was absolutely wonderful. It comes to show what you can really do when you partner and you think about that particular community's needs, and to be so comprehensive. Now, I know it sits in District 2, but it belongs to all of us, right? It's a regional, thank you. It's a regional asset. We all have Vietnamese communities within our own district that we represent, that we support. And because communities don't necessarily just live in one area, although they've tried to keep us in one particular area. We spread everywhere. And so I know that just like the Latino community, the Vietnamese community moves around, right? And one of the things that we've seen is folks, very dramatically moving from this county to the Central Valley, but at a very smaller scale, we've seen moves from the central part of this county to the southern part of the county because it's a little more affordable. I won't even say cheap because there's nothing cheap in this county, not anymore. You can't find anything in the east side where a working family can purchase a home like my parents did, like your parents did, right? It just isn't happening for working families anymore, which is really, really tragic and sad, but families need to do what they need to do in order to, to thrive and or survive. And so because one of the trends we have seen is residents moving to the southern part of the county, I'd love to see how we can explore some of these trends. If you've noticed trends, if you keep data in terms of, the very many that you serve. And I'm sure you're very thorough in terms of that data collection. Like, where are people coming from, right? Are they in Council District 7, right? Which is a large concentration of Vietnamese communities, but doesn't mean that everybody lives there, right? We live everywhere. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the trends that you've been seeing? And maybe include some of the top zip codes of the service areas that you've noticed. Anything that you've noted in terms of trends. I think you did a really wonderful job already in this annual report. Congratulations once again for everything. If there's something you can offer now, great, but I didn't want to put you in that position to answer any questions. Honey?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Arenas. So the full impact report is attachment D for the ledge file. And so if we look on page 8, we do have a service area map of these zip codes of where clients who come to the VAS, and this sort of is folks who come and get service navigation and translation sort of help, right? So the 30,000 or so numbers that are reported out, where they come from, right? And so 33 different zip codes, and the top 10 zip codes are noted on that page. And so those top 10 zip codes are largely in San Jose, and they make up for about 3/4 of the population that comes to the VAS. I'm also thrilled that in the last several months, I've been working with our co-located departments to look at their dashboard and their admin data, because we want to be very much data-driven in our approach. And we're looking at the zip codes of where the Vietnamese American sort of clients within their, that access their services reside, as well as folks who access their services at the VAS reside. And so we're diving into that data, and I'm excited to dive into that data with my colleagues, and we hope to share more of the learnings from that in future report outs.
Yeah, yes, and thank you. I know that the top service area zip codes are not in the south part of the county, but I'm wondering where they are. I did see, and believe me, my team did a thorough job of providing me with a service area map that I just am turning onto in the moment, but I don't see anything in the south part of the county. And so, if we can just have that conversation offline, I'm happy to just dive into this a little bit more. But I'm seeing where most folks are coming from. And it's a little bit of everywhere, but there's a cluster. It looks like a little bit of a cluster, right? Where they're all coming, and they seem to be in and around the VASC, right? Which is great because, otherwise that parking lot would be a lot more impacted and more people would be shouting at Supervisor Young. So, that is wonderful. Just if we can continue to see what that travel from South County looks like, I would be interested in seeing, or South San Jose as well. I mean, we have our cities are so, well, especially city of San Jose is so tremendously spread that I'm getting from one side to the other can take 20 minutes, and if it's, during commute time, forget about it. So I know that can pose kind of a challenge for folks. Anyways, I'd love to just see a little bit more about this for South County, but not a big deal. You're doing obviously a tremendously amazing job with the folks who are coming in and around the 33 different zip codes that you reflect here, and then the top 10 for that service area map. Not that you need any more people coming in, but of course, we represent different districts. I'd love to see what mine, what kind of those trends are for my particular district. And then I will second, if I haven't seconded.
I need to make the motion, but
you did
I
it?
just want to
Oh,
also
my gosh,
acknowledge.
I thought in my head.
No, Chair, that's a very astute observation. I think I know, based on other reports I've been brought to CSFC and the board, that there's a big movement of a lot of our formerly D2 families now moving to the D1 area as families are spreading out, and that there's growing numbers of Vietnamese Americans in South County, in the Gilroy area in particular. That's been like a trend that's been rapidly growing exponentially, right? Like it just keeps on getting to a steeper curve. And for a center and an initiative that's only 4 years, oh my God, baby. I certainly understand that the initial outreach plan was to make sure that the neighbors, because this was so thoroughly place-based, that the folks, a lot of time was spent informing the folks living in the immediate area of our existence. And it sounds like maybe it's a natural time to now venture out as, the VASC continues to be a renowned resource here, but it is a regional asset. And so I would encourage that. So my motion to receive the report with my gratitude and just awe, and then also for a future status update to also include your outreach efforts and if there's any opportunities to expand beyond our current home and the Story Road, Center Road area, if there's an opportunity for outreach and engagement with Vietnamese residents and residents at large in other parts of the county that matches similar demographic needs as our current population. Is that okay? Is okay, Jess? Did I make that clear? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that's what I've learned. Always make sure that the clerk understands what is clear. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. So I wonder if that could be maybe, did you ask for an off-agenda report? Or
no, for the next status report to include outreach efforts.
For the next annual report?
I think, when do you come back?
We're semi-annual, and so, yes. So
semi-annual.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. That sounds great. Perfect. I'm seconding that, and Jess, let's go ahead and take a roll.
Vice Chairperson Young?
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so next we have, and thank you so much, all of you. And please never mention age in this committee ever again. We're all young, regardless of our hearts. So we are moving on to item 8. This is consider recommendations relating to emerging issues impacting the County of Santa Clara Children's, Seniors, and Family Programs and Services. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Supervisor. I just wanted to tie in a little bit to the prior discussion because I think it relates to what's happening nationally and I think locally that impacts the social services. I won't repeat, I think, the very detailed summary that James Williams provided at the board on Tuesday regarding the financial impacts, but we know that there's going to be possible impacts to residents who feel reluctant to maybe reach out for assistance and come to our sites based on all the rhetoric that's happening nationally. And one of the things that we'll be bringing back in our updates is really the efforts that we're doing to engage and partner with our community partners, similar to, I think, the discussion about place-based services and how we can make sure that we're offering opportunities for 100% of the residents that have benefits that they're eligible for, that we are connecting them to those benefits. So that is something that we're going to be working on at top of mind and something you'll hear about moving forward. One of the things that we're doing is launching a campaign to promote Benefits Cal online services. So that allows clients to submit documents, reports, and applications without the need to come into our office. So, our goal would be to get 100% of our residents that are eligible to be signed up and applying through that. So that is something that if there's interest, we can provide information and potentially send out in newsletters to get more information out to our residents. Our in-home supported services, in January, they served over 1,500 lobby visitors and they had a satisfaction rate of 98%, so really good work for IHSS. On our PAGC program, the annual Embrace a Senior Holiday Gift Program had another wonderful year, provided 400 gifts to over 200 conserved clients with dementia and severe mental illness, thanks to the generosity of our community. And then for senior nutrition, we saw a successful launch of CHAMPS, which is Choosing Healthy Appetizing Meal Plan Solutions for Seniors, about 2 weeks ago. In partnership with Self-Help and the Elderly and the Health Trust, the Senior Nutrition Program expanded the CHAMPS initiative, innovative restaurant meal program with the second location, the Jade Cathay. And then finally, on the seniors agenda, we're administering a community survey as part of its Age-Friendly Action Planning 2.0. The survey is open through the end of March, and community listening sessions will happen later this year with community input leading to its second action plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so this update is as the Chief Children's Officer acting role, and my team asked me to give a couple updates around the Youth Task Force publicly. So we are in the recruitment season for the members for the Youth Task Force to start next school year. And as a reminder, this is for high school students. They're appointed by the board offices that are interested in local government and policy making. So we have an application open that's on the county website, and we have 4 vacancies, 2 in District 4 and 2 in District 2. We've reached out to the CBOs, city commissions, schools in both districts, and the current members are doing outreach as well. But if you know any interested high school students, please encourage them to apply. We also are offering our second summer internship opportunity for up to 2 current Youth Task Force members. And this is the second year where we've done our internship, and they help inform the work plan for the upcoming year, and have been very focused recently on supports for unhoused or underhoused students and transition into post-secondary opportunities. So those will likely be focuses of the internship, which is around kind of local policy research. So just wanted to make that announcement publicly around the Youth Task Force opportunities.
Perfect. And Wendy? I'm so glad you're good. Okay, who do we have next on the report? I'm sorry.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure, please. I'm so sorry.
Sarah, if you have like a graphic that we could include in our newsletters and social medias to like help promote the internship program?
Absolutely. Yep, we'll follow up.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And who's representing the Office of Children and Families Policy?
That would be me. I should
Again,
also announce
yeah.
that we currently have the director posting that's live right now.
How dare you?
So, yes. So that position is open, and eventually they will sit here potentially and do this.
Wow, we'll see.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding, of course. All right, and then a report from our Chief Probation Officer.
Hi, good afternoon, supervisors. I am here on behalf of
I'm
Deputy
so sorry.
Chief Jill Ugaldi, and I'm here on behalf of Chief Burchard.
Oh, awesome.
So good afternoon. So we wanted to report out on a couple of activities from our James Ranch and Juvenile Hall facilities, and several things to highlight. So one is in honor of Black History Month. Our probation counselors took the opportunity to educate some of our young people and staff about the profound importance of voting. So reflecting on the sacrifices and struggles of those who fought for the right to vote. All of our youth ages 16 to 17 were pre-registered to vote, and all of our youth 18 and older are now all registered voters, ensuring they can exercise their rights to participate in the shaping of our future.
What? Wow.
So another event that we wanted to highlight is that we have our Youth Advisory Council that just was established in our juvenile hall facility. We do have one that's up and running at our James Ranch facility that's been for several years guiding some of our policies and procedures and processes. So at juvenile hall, we just interviewed numerous youth to participate on this council. We selected 6 youth that are going to be forming the bylaws of this committee and the council, and they're going to create opportunities for youth to have a voice in discussing youth rights within our facilities, facility improvements, as well as programming opportunities. And then one other highlight that we wanted to mention today before our supervisors is that in collaboration with the Office of Women's Policy and the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement, our youth are participating in creating educational posters centered around workers' rights. And what they're going to do is they're going to concentrate on highlighting within their posters local, state, and federal labor laws, labor movements establishing workers' rights, importance of knowing labor rights, and the most exciting part is that they can win prizes for the most informational and creative posters. These prizes can be used towards anything from when they get released to helping their families to supporting victim restitution and or supporting other things such as education.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, please share with us what those posters end up looking like for their worker rights.
Definitely.
Or any of the things that they produce. I'd love to hear those direct reports. And it sounds like you
I was just
want
going to say
add-
that was so many good updates in a row. That was really fun. Thank you, Jill.
Of course.
That's amazing. Okay, and then I think we have the Department of Child Support Services Director, Deputy Director, Don.
Yeah, Don Simone, Deputy Director, Child Support Services. Nothing really new in the last month. We are paying particular attention to what's going on at the federal level. We are 1/3 state funded and 2/3 federally funded. So it is a huge issue for us as this budget season moves forward. We're just keeping an eye on things.
Okay, well, I will send you lots of good energy and pray, light a candle or something. Okay, well, on that happy note, thank you so much for that report. We will end this by taking public comment and hearing any last minute thoughts on any of the reports that we just heard.
I have one request to speak on item number 8. We'll go for 2 minutes.
I'm sorry, from who?
I have one request for item 8 as a whole.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, 2 minutes. Let's do 2 minutes.
We'll give 2 minutes to iPhone. Timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, I mean, I really do think, as an emerging issue, that we should continue to monitor what's going on on the federal level and see what kind of budget cuts and things of that nature are in the pipeline. But, I think also we should be looking at the level of care that we have in our community for our children. It doesn't seem like we do have a lot of that currently. I mean, I don't think it's too much to ask that the Director of Social Services or that the Deputy Director of Social Services or the Acting Director of DFCS, that they should care when I say that, my kids are being sexually abused and that they need a screening. I really don't think that I'm asking for the moon or anything like that. I mean, I remember when I first picked up my son when he was first being raped. I mean, he couldn't even look at me. I mean, he could only look away. He could look out the window or look down. And I'd tell him, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? I mean, he couldn't look at me. He couldn't speak to me. I mean, he was shell shocked. I mean, now he's coping with illicit drugs to numb his pain. I mean, why can't we care about that? I mean, his children and his children's children and their children, they're all going to be affected by this. And this isn't just me. I mean, ask Violet Brooks and Catherine Campbell and Dia Perron. This is happening to their kids as well. I mean, why are we not caring as a society, as a community, about these children whose sexual abuse is not being properly addressed? Please, let's care.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. With that, I will adjourn this meeting, and we will see each other next month. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the day.